Mini episode 1503 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1503. This is one of the two FDH Lounge original dignitaries you have here today. Rick Morris, along with Chris Galloway. We're taking a look at one of the most examined teams in the NFL this season here, a perennial object of public fascination, the Cleveland Browns, as always, for reasons good, bad, and ugly. And the Browns, as we are taping this here, we are just on the heels of getting the news about Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension for the season. So we covered our thoughts on the offense in the previous mini episode 1502. For Chris's and my thoughts on the Watson deal as a whole and our very divergent opinions, go back to mini episodes 1459 and 1460 from this past spring. As we are looking at this roster here and dissecting it up and down the line. Let's take a look here also, Chris. We hadn't done special teams yet, so let's lump that in with the defense. So the revolving door at punter kind of sticks around here as well, and also at kicker, albeit with the drafting of Cade York. I think the Browns do have reason to feel optimistic that they have somebody who can stick around for the long term.
Yeah, you and I were probably the couple of the rare guys that were, not rare, there were enough that were happy with the draft pick of him in fourth round.
Right.
I know historically, if people are like, you don't draft a kicker or you pick him in the seventh round. Well, based on how the Browns have been since they let Dawson go,
yep.
You and I can think about how many games they've cost themselves with poor kicking.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I don't understand why fans downplay the position when we know there have been games that have been cost us games because of the poor performance.
Right.
Whereas the Ravens have benefited from excellent field goal kicking.
Right.
So I think to me it's clear that it matters. So I had no issue with the Browns going, we identify him as the best guy out there coming out of college, and we're going to go get him. And we're not going to risk getting cute and trying to get him a round later or later in the round. We're just going to take him because we need this position. Look, we've seen the kid kick. He's got the leg.
Right.
He can hit from 60, 65. There's no issue there. We've seen in college nerves of steel, kicking a game-winning 55, 60-yard field goal in the fog in the swamp, right? Couldn't even see the uprights. He just kicked to where he was pretty sure they were.
Right.
So far, I like the kids. There's no denying his legs, so that's not a question. And you and I both know it for kicking, it really comes down between the ears. He does not lack for confidence. I think we're going to be in good shape. And I predict he's going to win us a game this year and settle this debate whether or not they should have picked him in the fourth round or not. I think we're going to be in good hands for a decade with Cade York. I want to believe. Based on his track record as a college player, there's no reason to believe that he can't handle the pressure and hit big kicks because he's done it.
Yeah, I would agree. And for the people that were bitching about it, again, that's the whole kind of unwashed masses fan kind of a thing, because these are the same people that were crying about the Browns' putrid field goal kicking a year ago. And again, you have to make an investment in a player like that. You generally only get one or two players per draft that are worth that level of investment. And the Browns were the only team, when I was going through doing our team needs assessment for Pro Football Draftology 2022, they were the only team that I listed as really needing a field goal kicker, because there are some other teams around the league that maybe could use an upgraded kicker, but it wasn't going to make that big of a difference to them. I mean, a team like, let's say, Jacksonville, okay? How much is it going to change their bottom line whether they've got a great kicker or not? But the Browns really needed an upgrade as a team that was on the playoff bubble a year ago and maybe again this year, depending on what happens. So you've got, turnover at punter as well here. So at both kicker and punter, you got a new guy coming in.
Yeah, you've got, what is it, Bojorquez? I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Yes, I was going to make you go first on that.
But I just, I don't know a lot about him. I know that in 21 he averaged 46.5 yards a punt. That's pretty good.
Yep.
It certainly was better than what we got last year out of the Hammer, who ended up being a disappointment.
Right.
I think for the following 2 years, we watched the Scottish Hammer in the offseason work on getting big shoulders and big arms and getting, looking like he's ready to play rugby. And as I kept saying through the whole thing, don't you make your money on your leg?
Right.
Why are we worried so much about our upper body getting all swole?
Right.
I didn't get it, and I think it cost him a job. So, look, the one thing I think is kickers are hugely important. Punters are huge just from a field standpoint, but they are typically dime a dozen-y kind of guys by and large, unless you have some real, unless you have one of the top 2 or 3 punters. They're all pretty much middling. And I think, honestly, that's what this kid, Corey, his first name is Corey. I think that's what he is.
Yeah, yes.
He's in his 5th season. He's been average to just above average. Last year was actually a pretty decent year for him. And so, let's just see what we got. And if we don't like what we got, we'll go find another one off the waiver wire, right?
Right.
And then as far as the rest of special teams, look, Charlie Hewlett, he's going to be the long snapper, steady Eddie, no worries there. And, we signed Jakeem Grant, who we talked about in the last episode about wide receiver slot stuff. He's going to handle all the return duties.
Yep.
He's going to be our frontline return guy, speedster, small guy, so he fits that role. He can be dangerous at times with the ball. I thought, we tried last year with guys like Felton, but it just didn't really work.
Right.
So I thought they were smart to go out and get a guy who, when he was with Miami, and was he with Chicago prior to Miami?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so he has shown, the ability to be a burner, the ability to take it the other way, and to not fumble the ball. So that's what you're looking for. So I thought that was a good under the radar signing that really helps them in an area where they also struggled last year in terms of who their kick and punt returners and how they were performing. So that's an upgrade. Kicker is no doubt an upgrade. Punter's probably a slight upgrade. And, long snapper remains, steady Eddie and Charlie Hewitt. So, I think overall they improved their special teams roster.
Well, and looking at the Scottish Hammer last year at punter, I think a couple of Letterkenny aficionados like me and you would understand. Jonesy and Riley should have been in that guy's ear. Don't skip leg day!
Yeah, exactly.
And
why are we so worried about how huge you're getting on the top half?
Yeah.
When you're making your money on the bottom half.
That's right.
Listen, and I think he's a good kid. I think it's cool that he was living in Tremont and he liked to go to the pubs after the games.
Mm-hmm.
That's all well and good, right? It's fun. But it's like, dude, we need better performance. And let's be honest, he shit the bed in that Kansas City game. So,
oh, my God.
Right out of the gate, he cost us, that absolutely critical week 1 matchup. So, I think his number was up after that game, frankly.
Well, yeah, and he was probably a lot less popular in the gentrified bars of Tremont after that game, and as the season went along here. So, he was probably a lot more fun guy to drink with when things were going well. But be that as it may, we'll see what happens. It should be an upgrade at punter, just because again the Hammer was subpar for much of last year. Certainly an upgrade at kicker with the investment that was made there. So that's what it looks like special teams-wise. Defensively here, as we look in the trenches, no qualms whatsoever about the bookends. And you could make an argument, Well, any pairing, I guess, with Garrett, I mean, automatically is probably going to be in the mention for best pair of bookends in the league. But you got Clowney on the other side, who came in and did fine last year. Fortunately, Clowney also has the capacity to play in the middle, because that's where, as you look at the defense and as you look at some of the question marks here, defensively, what they can pull together. Jordan Elliott, Taven Bryan. Inside here, you've got Perrion Winfrey, Tommy Togai, and Sheldon Day sort of looming kind of right between them. This is, I think, similar to what we said a year ago, where we were kind of like, they just need two of these guys. And last year, it seemed like on paper they had even more bodies that were potentially, able to fill those spots there. But again, we're still kind of looking a year later here to see what's going to happen, what's going to materialize. If the inside of this line, again, it's not going to be as great as the outside of it. That's an unfair standard. But if it can just be, middle of the pack league-wise, then this front four is really going to make a ton of noise this year.
Well, to your point, our bookends we're in great shape there. Again, stay healthy, Clowney, and we're in great shape. Right. The issue, look, the tackles are no doubt, they're our wide receiver group of the defense.
Yes.
They're light on quality and a lot of question marks there.
Mm-hmm.
And, Taven Bryan was a first-round draft pick who's never lived up. We got him cheap on a one-year deal. I expect him to start at right tackle. I would expect Jordan Elliott to start at left tackle, and then obviously with Togiai and Winfrey backing them up with Sheldon Day in the mix, to your point. There were times last year when Sheldon Day played great.
Yeah.
In some games, and then there were games where he was kind of gone, disappeared. So I view this. I don't think you're going to get average tackle play. I think, unfortunately, you're probably looking at slightly below average tackle play, unless they go out and they get a guy like Richardson or Sue, and not that those guys are going to be difference makers at this point in their career. Fans have got to get off the idea. They got to get off the names, where they're pounding the table saying, sign Sue, sign, Richardson again. These guys they're just veteran guys that you could plug in, that you may get one really good game out of them in the year, but they're there for leadership. They're there, Sue's there to be a one or two down guy. He's not going to play a ton of snaps. He's going to play 35% of snaps at best. But again, those are the kind of guys that are still out there that maybe you can get an experienced guy late if you need be. And the same thing with on your edge, guys. Don't count out McKinley coming back either.
Right.
He is healing up from his surgery. He's talking to teams. The Browns are one of them. It does seem like they might be interested in bringing him back again to put him in the rotation, because after those guys, you've got some question marks. You got the rookie Isaiah Thomas. You traded for Chase Winovich, who actually I think that was a good trade for both teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think a fresh start for Mack Wilson in New England and Winovich getting to Cleveland to play edge again versus trying to play a linebacker. We're not playing him, in a traditional linebacker role. He's an edge guy.
Right.
So I think that's one of those rare trades that just kind of made sense for both players and both teams. Like, okay, I'll give you your underperforming guy. I'll take your underperforming guy, and maybe it works for both of us. And then we've got this Stephen Weatherly, who was with the Vikings. It's another guy behind Clowney, and the rookie Alex Wright, who I think they're excited about, but he's raw, inexperienced. Don't expect much out of him this year, right? Out of UAB.
Yeah.
Mike Curtis Weaver from Boise State, still clinging to the NFL. He's got to do something this year, or his career will be over by next year. And unfortunately, he hasn't shown us much in this league.
He has not.
So to your point, they may want to bring in a guy like McKinley for depth, because after Garrett and Clowney, there's not a lot of depth at all. So certainly proven depth there isn't.
That's right.
So I think when it all shakes out, Winovich will probably be behind Clowney, Wright or Thomas will be behind Garrett. I don't think Weaver makes the roster. A couple of these other guys, Isaac Rochelle, who's, he's a tryout kind of guy. He's not making the roster. So again, ends are fine. Starting ends are fine. defensive tackles are weak, and I don't think they really have a solution for that, to be honest with you. So they're going to throw bodies at it and hope they get by.
Well, and again, all you need is, I mean, if one of these guys could step up on the edge, then it's an option where, again, it might not be Clowney's favorite thing to do, but I mean, if it gets to be dire enough inside, you can at least move Clowney inside. The fact that you have, decent depth out at the defensive end positions here, you may end up seeing that at some point just out of necessity if they need Clowney to fill a hole.
Yeah, you could do that and certainly put Winovich on the end.
Mm-hmm.
Here and there. You don't want to do it play in and play out and game in and game out, but
right.
You're right. Here and there, you can mix it up. And look, I'm intrigued by Perion Winfrey. All right? I liked him coming out of Oklahoma. He was one of the players that I targeted on my little list of players I was intrigued by and I wanted them to draft. Mm-hmm. So I was thrilled when they grabbed him. So and where they grabbed him.
Right.
There were a number of teams that had second-round grades on him.
Right.
So, I think, you and I like to talk about value. I think they got value in that draft pick.
Oh, they did.
But again, he's a rookie. I don't want to expect much out of a defensive tackle rookie. I expect him to play some. I expect every now and then to see a flash of something and go, ooh, but this isn't his year. This is him eating up some snaps this year. Look for, hopefully he comes into his own, next year. This year, you're just really hoping that he's eating up some snaps and making a few plays in the rotation. But and Togi guy, he's another guy. He's going to have to show something, or he won't be long for this roster either.
Yes, he did not perform at the level that some people were hoping for last year, and some of that is the built-in, inflation of expecting. Oh, he's an Ohio State player. You get a lot of that with this fan base and people expecting that, but. Again, he didn't show much last year. He's going to have to keep showing something just because they're going to be turning over those roster spots if they're not getting production out of guys. I mean, Winfrey is safe for a while, but a lot of these other guys here, if they're not cutting the mustard, you might see the team out there making moves. And quite frankly, defensive tackle at this moment, would you agree with me that if this team is going to make a move at the trade deadline, that might be the likeliest spot?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think that if there is any move, even in late in training camp, they'll be looking at the waiver wire first and foremost on these defensive tackles.
Yeah.
Now, look, they're not the only ones. Good defensive tackles are they're not just falling off of trees.
Right.
So, they will be looking. But to your point, I mean, they were 8 and 9 last year, so they'll be a little higher up the pecking order on grabbing somebody. But they got 2 rookies back there that that they've got. They got Roger Perry out of Illinois, and they've got the kid out of LSU, Glenn Logan. Mm-hmm. Again, another rookie, 300 pounds, 6'3". So I mean, we'll see. I mean, they got a couple of these guys. They'll probably start to stash at least one of them on the practice squad. But in terms of Brian, he's going to start. He's played a bunch of, he's a 2008 draft pick, 2018, sorry, out of Florida, played in the SEC. Who knows? Maybe we can, squeeze a little more juice out of that turnip.
Yeah, and I know that they still have some hope for Jordan Elliott as well, based on his pedigree. As far as the defensive line goes here, I just want to clarify, no truth to the rumor out there, Alex Wright. He is no relation to the Alex Wright, Das Wunderkind Alex Wright from World Championship Wrestling in the 90s, the pretty boy German kid that would come out dancing to techno. He is no relation to this Alex Wright. 2 separate guys here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say no.
Yeah.
Especially since this Alex Wright was born in the year 2000.
Yes. Yes.
So, but he certainly fits their profile, right? He's 6'5", 270. Like, he fits the Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney. Physically, he's the same guy, right?
Right.
So, I see why they like him. Metric-wise, he fits what they want as an end. But he, coming out of UAB, he needs developed. He hasn't played against NFL-quality tackles. So it's going to be a steep learning curve for him.
Yeah.
But again, he's that kind of player that you're developing, good teams develop, that, when they get to year 3, he's replacing Jadeveon Clowney, right?
Right.
And so, he has that potential. It's, let's see if they can develop it. Because physically, he's got all those parts and pieces.
He
in terms
does.
of athleticism. It's whether they can put it all together in terms of technique.
If he comes in any game, a home game, I guess we're talking about here, and gets a sack, I gotta tell you, I will pop so hard if they start playing the old Das Wunderkind techno theme music to celebrate the sack. That would be like, it would be like me and maybe 5 other people getting the reference, but I would laugh pretty hard if it happened. So,
I can assure you they won't, because the 26-year-old running that will have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Exactly. That 26-year-old needs to watch a little more classic wrestling here. But as far as it goes with the defensive tackles, one of the worry spots here, I'm sure for Browns fans this year, and I know enough people who still are, is that when you look at this historically, as far as the things that sort of scar the psyche over a period of time, people point to the most obvious thing, the level of quarterback play going back to, I would call it the curse of Tim Couch, when this team and the crappy fans basically ran him out of town here, and Butch Davis and everyone, but whatever you want to ascribe it to over a period of time. But one of the more underrated things here over a period of time that has been very jarring to Browns fans to watch, of course not in a good way, is the ability of teams just to run the ball at will. That has been a core precept of this defense, if you will, over the last 22 years or however long. And it just time and time again. And you have to think, particularly, Chris, if the offense gets to where you're thinking that it will, and it very well might, quite frankly, with Watson when he comes in for the last half of the season, last half plus, then teams are going to be looking, unless they have their own guy like Herbert or Burrow or somebody like that, they're going to be looking to try and extend drives on this team. And so that's going to be part of the game plan coming in, you would think, for a lot of teams here. So this is a thing here where the ability for other teams to throw off the Browns' offense by extending drives and running right at these guys here. The Browns are fortunate they have a lot of athleticism in the linebacker core, which can help mitigate this a little bit here. But if the middle of this line is not even an average middle of the line, which I kind of agree with you, it'd be asking a lot for that to be the case. They could really pay the price on both sides of the ball if that is true.
Yeah, I think they could, and I just think that we had probably subpar tackle play last year.
Yep, no doubt.
It didn't really cost us, and I think some of that's the scheme, and the focus is on the linebackers, and that's where I would put our focus, and why the D tackles, their job is going to be to just keep guys off the linebackers, and then let the athletic linebackers make the plays.
Right.
So when we look at our linebackers, Jeremiah Ukuamoa, he is a star in the making.
Mm-hmm.
This guy last year, you saw his speed.
Mm-hmm.
He is like a torpedo. He is a tackling machine. His form is outstanding, and he'll be playing in that will spot again. I think he is going to become a star this year in this league. I think he is a stud. You and I loved the pick in the second round.
Yes.
I think almost all the fans did. I mean, most fans were ecstatic when they moved up and grabbed him. And, it'll be interesting to see in the preseason, because we didn't get to see it last year because of injury. The guy backing him up in that will spot is kind of a little bit of a poor man's JOK and Tony Fields out of West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's going to be the backup in that will. And then you're going to have in the Mike, obviously, and again, they aren't going to play a lot of three linebacker sets. It's going to be mostly two with an additional safety. But,
right.
For our purposes, we'll just kind of break down, Will, Mike, and Sam. In the Mike, you're going to have Anthony Walker, obviously, starting with Taki backing him up. I thought it was good to bring back Walker. He was just barely above average last year. But he was better than what we had the year before.
Well, yes, definitely.
I love Walker from his leadership standpoint. You could tell the other young linebackers really gravitate to him. So just from a leadership standpoint and a guy who's seen it all and who's kind of like a coach in the field, I thought that was a no-brainer to bring him back.
Yes.
And again, Taki, again, this may be his last year on the roster. I mean, he's not really shown us a lot, few plays here and there, but he did enough to come back for them to bring him back. And he'll be backing up Walker at that Mike spot. And then I remain excited, and I'm probably, me and his mother are the only ones. I loved the Jacob Phillips pick at LSU I think it was the 4th round they took him.
Yep.
He is athletic as all get out. Again, when he's healthy and you see the flashes, you go, oh my God. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to get on the damn field this year. He's got to stay on there. Because I think ideally what they really would like to have is JOK and Phillips, the 2 linebackers on the field.
Yep.
And those 2 guys are fast. They're rangy. They're tackling machines. And I think that's ideally what they want in those 2 linebacker sets is those 2 guys on the field. But Phillips has got to stay healthy in order to have that up. And obviously he's backed up by Willie Harvey, who just somehow just keeps sticking around this roster, whether it's practice squad, active, inactive. He plays just well enough to just hang around the roster, right?
Right.
Like, it just seems like, I don't know, is it me? I mean, it feels like it's been like 4 or 5 years that he's been around. But you know what? Actually, I take it back. This is his 2nd season. I feel like he's been around. I don't know why. I feel like he's been around forever. I feel like he's a guy who just, when he gets a chance, he makes a play, and he's just hanging around the roster.
Yeah. Well, it's not that they've never had a deep linebacking room, so you have a chance for guys like that to stick at the margins. Now, when you look at the starters, even if you go 3 deep with the starters here, even if you include Walker, I mean, this is clearly still a top 5 linebacking core in the league in terms of just athleticism. It has a chance to be a top 5 linebacking group overall, which is interesting because this regime historically has not prioritized linebacker as much as other positions, although I will admit the JOK selection did seem to represent something of a pivot in the philosophy there as well. If this can actually be a top 5 linebacking group in the league, which is possible. I don't know how likely it is, but if it's possible, that is one of the things here. When you're looking for indicators on either side of the ball that could be that turbo boost to put this team in the playoffs, that's one of them right there.
That is 100%. I think athletically, this linebacking core fits what the front office has wanted to build.
Mm-hmm.
Fast and sure tacklers.
Yep.
And to your point, the potential is there for a top 5 unit. Are they going to get there? Don't know.
Yeah.
But athletically, to your point, they are athletic as hell. So that's not going to be a problem of having slow, flat-footed linebackers. It's whether or not they develop in terms of understanding the game, being in the right position, making the right reads, and being where they need to be at the right moment. I think that's, again, back to why it was so important to bring Walker back. Because he helps those younger guys with that development.
Absolutely.
And Walker's a guy that you can already see when he ends his career, he's going to go right into coaching.
Right.
And when he ends his career 5 years later, we're going to see him as linebackers coach, some defensive coach somewhere on some team pretty quick. Like I can tell he's that kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I again, to your point, top 5 athletically. Even with a guy like Sione Takitaki and Fields, these are athletic, fast guys. It's whether they put it all together and actually perform. So I feel fine about about our group. The only the only issue is Walker's out right now with injury.
Yep.
Phillips' injury has had an injury history. Tony Fields missed all but the last game, I think, with injury. That is, to me, is the big question mark on these guys. You know, they got to stay healthy and stay on the field. If they do, I'm going to feel fine about it.
Yeah, and again, and JOK's not the biggest of guys too, so you might have some injury concerns just from the durability of his physique. That is one of the things that caused him to drop in the draft. That's not a tangible concern about him, but just a thing of what could happen, if he gets caught at the wrong point in a game. The secondary of this team is something that a year ago I think was disproportionately responsible for. When you look back and you think about the disappointment of last season for Browns fans, it's easy to cue in on the quarterback play and everything like that, and why wouldn't you? But just the complete and utter embarrassment of looking like a CFL team against teams like the Chargers and the Cardinals. That Cardinals game, and maybe it's because I'm friends with a Cardinals fan, but that's one of the most humiliating games I ever remember seeing. And the defense was disproportionately responsible for it. This defensive secondary, it just the embarrassment of the whole being nowhere near the sum of the parts. And they played somewhat better down the stretch here, so there may be reason to think that this season that will be an upgrade over last year. But if it's not, if it's a repeat of last year, this team doesn't make the playoffs. They have to get everything they can out of this here. You're looking at the starters. In all likelihood, you've got your corners of Ward and Newsome, so 2 first-round picks as your cornerback starters, with second-rounder Greedy Williams being a guy who will spell them and probably be the third cornerback in a number of circumstances here. Grant Delpit, now a year removed from the Achilles surgery, came back okay, and hopefully for his sake that the year removed from it can help him even more. John Johnson out there, he had, I think, kind of a disappointing year last year. A lot was expected out of him, and there were some lapses. As far as behind that, it's pretty decent depth. Ronnie Harrison, who also had a season to forget in a lot of ways, and Richard LeCount is a guy who has a pedigree that is very strong coming out of Georgia. So there is an awful lot of talent here in the secondary. So it's similar to the starting linebackers, at least. I would speak mostly of the starting linebackers when I'm talking about the talent. Here, even when you start to get to one or two of the backups at each position, you could say that there is a decent amount of talent. But giving a return on investment this year, I think it's one of the most critical things for this entire team, because a repeat of the first half of last year, particularly in the games where you're going to have the backup quarterback in there and you're going to need the defense to step up a little bit, if they can't do it, this team's doomed.
Yeah, I know your criticisms of the secondary are warranted. I think if you look at them last year as the season went on, they got better and better as a unit. They got more cohesive. And I get, with all the new bodies last year, those things tend to take time, the gelling, guys trusting each other, being in the right places, understanding how the other guys play. I just think that you saw as the year went on, they got more cohesive as a unit, so that by the end of the season, it was night and day. They were playing much better as a unit. Now, that said, guys like Troy Hill underperformed in the slot, and so they said, see you later, we don't need you. I will tell you this. This is what I predict will happen. Ward, again, another guy, big contract, but again, dude, you got to stay on the field. I worry that, he's going to be the perpetual starting, he's going to be on the field for 12 games a year guy, which is probably why they went and drafted Martin Emerson Jr., because even though they gave Ward the big contract, he has not shown an ability to stay on the field for a full season.
Well, and concussions. Having a concussion history is very troublesome. You don't know if he's one or two hits to the dome away from the whole thing being done.
Right. So, again, when Ward is out there and healthy, top 5 cornerback. So I think we're set there. I actually don't think – I think your other starter on the outside is going to be Greedy Williams.
Okay, interesting.
He played pretty well there, and it seems like they are committed to moving Greg Newsome inside to take over for Troy Hill.
Okay.
Newsome is super athletic and has shown some ability there. He actually graded out better in the slot than Troy Hill did last year, despite being a rookie who had never played the spot. So I actually think it's going to be Greedy on the outside opposite Ward, with Newsome covering the slot and therefore covering, for a lot of teams, their most dangerous wide receiver in some regards.
Sure.
I think that actually bodes well. If Williams continues to develop and stay healthy, I think we're fine on the outside. Moving Newsome into the slot again, they could end up being, from 1, 2, 3 the best cornerback group in the league.
Possible. It's possible
if they hit their potential based on what we've seen out of them so far in their careers. And when you talk safety, and then throw Martin Emerson in, the kid that they drafted in the 3rd round, their first pick this year. Look, I mean, he's tall, he's lanky, long arms, he's athletic, he can play outside, he can also play the slot. He's also a guy that they may rely on to cover some tight ends, because he'd be really good at that. So that's why I think they grabbed him. A.J. Green, the guy they signed, staffed in the practice squad, they've developed him, they brought him up. He has improved in his ever since they drafted him. You've seen
he's had some rough moments, dude. He's had some rough moments.
He has, but I've seen progress. So he's good roster depth, in my opinion, for one of these corner spots. Then you talk about safety. Grant Delpit is, other than JOK, he is my, DPJ of the defense. I expect him to just blow up this year. I think we are finally going to see the Grant Delpit stud muffin that we have been waiting for. I think he's going to have a great year at safety. And with Ronnie Harrison backing him up with depth, I feel good about that sort of 1-2 in that spot. And then John Johnson, again, some of the struggles last year, new guys, new system, Johnson's trying to adjust. He got his grading, according to PFF, got better by towards the end of the year. So I just think with these guys all sort of back, and I think I look for Johnson to sort of resume steady play again in that free safety spot. And then, as you mentioned, LeCount, good pedigree. Again, he's going to make this team to back up Johnson. Johnson the third, backed up by LeCount the third. Again, depth. You got to have depth. Great teams have depth, and I think we've got it in the secondary. I like this group. I like this unit, and I expect great things out of them this year. I really do. I think they're going to be a solid unit, and I was really impressed. Before last year, people talked about Joe Woods on the hot seat, blah, 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 and they talked about his first year as DC. And you and I talked about it prior to last year's preview. We were like, can we tone down the criticism of Joe Woods?
Right, because the back seven sucked.
He was working with a lot of hot garbage his first year.
Back seven was awful.
It was terrible. And so I was just like, can we lay off Joe? Like, we're not going to grade him for what he had to work with. I thought last year this defense improved as the year went on, and to me that's a sign of good coaching. And Rick, I believe the defense is a top 10 defense. So that's what I expect this year. Well, I expect a top 10 defense out of these guys. And to me, it starts with those two ends, those bookends in Clowney and Garrett, and then it's that secondary. I think that is a really great secondary with a couple athletic linebackers. As we said, top 5 athletic in the league. I think this defense, again, most of these guys back, system, again, in their second year in it. I think this is a top 10 defense with potential of being, 5th, 6th best defense in the league. Maybe even a little better statistically. It's possible.
Well,
so when we talk about the offense needing to get those points per game up to 30, 31 a game, if the defense can come in around that 20-21, holding teams down, the Browns are going to win games. They're just going to win games. So when I see, clowns like CBS Sports, the guy on there predict, the Browns are going to go 6-11, and I go, how? They went 8-9 with a divided locker room and a broken down, ineffective quarterback with a bad secondary that had to improve as the year went on, and they did. How do you expect them to go 2 games worse? I mean, are we kidding? That's not going to happen.
Well, I would hasten to say that prediction couldn't possibly have come from friend of the show, Dave Richard, the fantasy guy at CBS Sports. Had to be somebody else. Dave Richard is smarter than that.
I'm fingering it. And to me, when I saw that, I just put the big old clown emoji on top of it.
Yeah. But that sounds more like a Will.
Now, maybe in his defense, maybe he was truly believing Watson out for the year, or something like that. I don't know.
That might have been Will Brinson or Pete Prisco. They're a little more into the hot takes, so it could have been one of those guys.
Well, clearly it was, because I thought to myself, 6-11.
Yeah.
My God, they had quarterback play that ranked like 30th, 28th, whatever in the league, and they went 8-9.
Well, I will say, I mean, as somebody, again, still emotionally invested at the time, I did in the first half of last season move into the Fire Joe Woods camp. Again, they did, quietly improve in the second half of the year. Really, once it was kind of too late, that was when they seemed to play their best, which to me is a little bit sus in terms of when you're at your best when the moments matter the least. But I'll look at this and I'll say, as far as where I think they'll slot in the league, again, picking a metric here, whether it's DVOA or whatever, just sort of a symbolic number. I'll say 10th best defense in the league, because I think, again, there's still the question of the defensive tackles, and there's still a matter of, is the secondary going to be as great as the sum of the parts? I think they're going to be closer than they were last year, but that, to me, those are the big questions on the defense. Obviously, defensive tackle's the biggest one, and then probably number two, even ahead of the linebackers, I would say. And the linebackers have been sort of perennially the number one or number two question. But I think, again, if this secondary can live up to its vast potential, I think that is now the second biggest question on this defense.
Yeah, I think they will. I don't right now. I'm not questioning the secondary. I think they're solid, and I feel like this year, if you can rush the passer, which we can on the bookends, and you can defend you can defend the secondary, which I think we can with this group. I think that makes us, probably about the 8th. I'm going to conservatively say 8th best defense.
Okay.
Don't be shocked if somehow PFF has this suddenly at like 4 or 5. But, and again, so if you've got the 8th best defense and you end up with the 11th best offense, aren't you a playoff team?
Well, again, it's the AFC, so it's possible you miss the playoffs if that's the case. But yeah, I mean, realistically, even in the AFC, you probably are. So that's what I think probably accounts for. And the margins are so slim, because if you're saying basically, 8 defensively, 10 or 11 offensively, and I'm saying 13 offensively and like 10 defensively, that would probably account for me having the Browns just slightly on the outside looking in and you having them in the playoffs, because those margins, as close as our numbers are to each other, therein likely lies the difference between being a playoff team and not.
I think that's exactly right. And, the NFL has always been a razor-thin margin league, and you live and die in the margins. So,
yeah.
I just think that this is a team that's going to win at least 10 games. And again, 10 is the minimum to make the playoffs in the AFC. You probably need to win 11 to make it. And I think they're going to be right there. I think they're going to have a shot. And I think that with Watson, they're a team that if they are healthy and they get in, they sneak in that 6th or 7th slot, they're going to be the team that nobody wants to play.
Well, yeah.
Because I believe if they sneak in, that means they're trending in the right direction. And they've got their quarterback now. And so I kind of see them as that dangerous team that everyone will go, I don't want any part of that.
Well, and it is one of these things, too, where I expect a tremendous push in the AFC among the non-division winners. I think one of the most coveted spots in the playoffs is going to be the number 5 seed, because you've got, I believe it's Indianapolis. Some people might still think Tennessee. But I think there's a big difference between whoever the division winner is there and the other 3 division winners. So the chance to go in and take one on the road. I mean, look at the way that Tennessee crapped the bed as a number 1 seed for last year. That tells you all you need to know right there. So if the Browns or anybody else can get up to the number 5 seed, you're looking at, I think, the very likely scenario of actually being favored on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for me, the Browns this year, it's all about trending better and better towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
Survive with Brissett, get Watson back, stay healthy, develop that chemistry and be peaking at the end of the year. A lot like what you saw out of the Bengals last year.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at them statistically as the year went on, they were not that great, but they trended right and they got hot at the end. And they started playing well at the end. And I thought that, that's where you want to be is and I think that's the trick for the Browns this year is sort of working through the season towards that momentum towards the end. Find a way to sneak into the playoffs. And if they do, that means that they have become a dangerous team at the end.
Right. I mean, the Bengals really kind of were like the 2007 Colorado Rockies last year as far as how they put it together to go on that final run. So we will see how... They
were 10 minutes away from winning the Super Bowl.
They were.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, they were very, very close indeed. And that's with Joe Burrow having a shower curtain for an offensive line. So imagine what they'll do this year. Now that they've actually put some money into it, which is generally a foreign concept for Mike Brown. But that's another topic for another day. You and I will be hitting that topic and many more, all 31. Although I think we can go a little lighter on the Browns when we get to it when we do our divisional previews here in the next couple of weeks, as we traditionally do. And we'll touch on the Browns, but I think we'll definitely throw up the old thumb and say go back to 1502 and 1503 to hear our thoughts in depth on the Browns.
Exactly. We'll gloss over Browns and say, yeah, exactly. Go see, go listen to 02 and 03.
Yes, because whatever we say is not going to come close to the depth that we had here. A combined 90 minutes plus on this on both sides of the ball, but that's the kind of depth that you get from the lounge, and specifically, of course, that pool of original dignitaries, you and I included here, Chris Galloway. So thank you so much for these, my friend, and looking forward to the divisional previews in the next couple of weeks.
Rick, it's always great to talk with you, and thanks for everybody for listening.
All right, thanks, Chris, and thank you, everybody, for checking out FDH Lounge Mini Episode 1503.